Hello everyone, my name is Rob Harron and welcome to your next episode in the Youth Prospect series. With me today we have Willie. Willie, thanks very much for joining me today. How are you today?
I'm all good, thanks, mate. Cheers.
Thanks. This is probably the umpteenth time of trying to do this. We've had technical difficulties on my part, so I'm looking forward to actually getting this recorded today. So thank you very much for giving up your time to get this done. So before we get into things, I just want to say we are in association with Man on Inverclyde, soon to be the Anchor. They are a suicide prevention team based in Greenock, but they do help anyone out within the west of Scotland. So if you are needing to talk to anyone, please reach out to the team, and they'll definitely have a opportunity to listen to anything that you've got to say. And we're also proudly sponsored by Premier VPN, so you can see there the bottom left hand corner of your screen, fast, safe and private VPN. So if you need any VPN needs, please reach out to the guys on vpn.net, and they'll get you sorted. So with that being said, we'll dive right into today's episode. Last week or 2 weeks ago we did Finlay Curtis. Today's youth prospect we're looking at is Archie Stevens. He is an 18-year-old Englishman who plays in the winger position. Um, he joined us from Wimbledon under 18s a couple of years ago and has made the progression to the B team. And he seems to be getting a lot of attention, shall we say. So, Willie, what's your? I know you follow the B team quite closely. So, what's your initial thoughts on Archie Stevens on what you've seen from him probably this season and over the last maybe couple of seasons?
Yeah, look, Archie's a talented winger. Obviously signed just over 2 years ago now. He came in, I think it was 2022, if memory serves me right. Um, just one of those guys that makes things look quite easy at times. He's very confident on the ball. He's one of those guys that can play on both sides of the pitch. I think he's probably his strongest on the right side, but I think as long as he's playing Archie, he's quite happy, to be honest. He's got a good turn of pace. He's got good technical ability, and he's obviously got an eye for goal. I think just doing my rough checks last night, I think he's round about 30, 35 goals for Rangers as a wide player, which isn't too bad. But he has obviously been out injured as well for reasonably long periods at times as well. So that's probably quite disappointing for Archie. But yeah, there's no doubting there's ability there. I guess the only issue Rangers are probably having now is I'm pretty sure he's out of contract at the end of this season. So I would imagine he'll be looking for certain guarantees if he was to remain at Rangers. If not, I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in Archie, especially from clubs in the English Premier League.
Sure, sure. No, I mean, a wee bit of a look myself over the last kind of couple of days from our initially going to record the pod, and I kind of picked out that he play as you say, plays mainly as a right winger or a right midfielder. Um, this season he's played in the Challenge Cup 3 times. He's got 1 goal, 2 assists. He's played for the England under 17s and under 18s in the last couple of years. You're right to say joined July 22 from Wimbledon under 18s to the Rangers under 18s, and he stepped up to the B team in the summer of this year. Now, I wasn't too sure how long the length of contract was, so thank you for clarifying that it's probably going to run out this year. Um, it definitely has, from the kind of clips that we've seen of him through social media and obviously through what Rangers have put out on their own social media channels, it definitely seems an exciting prospect, and it seems to be certainly gaining a lot of attention from teams down south. I did kind of pick up that um, I think he was linked with a move in January of this year to Brighton. I think they were looking at him. So again, as you said, I think he's definitely someone who appears to have the talent to go places. Um, it'll just be interesting to see in the coming months if he is offered a new contract and what guarantees he's given. Um, do you think at this moment in time, Willie, he's kind of got a pathway to the first team? I don't think he's really made a lot of appearances. I think when he first came in, he's maybe made 1 appearance for the senior team.
Yeah.
Again, I was looking at, I think it was the League Cup. in that first season that he joined us, 22-23 game against Queen of the South. He was 16 at the time, so again he was obviously very, very young when he came in, and I guess it was probably a substitute appearance. But that I obviously thought at that point, under the previous management, that he was talented enough to make the breakthrough. We've obviously not seen him a lot in the first team set up at the moment. We've obviously seen the likes of, as we've discussed before, Ross McCausland, Zach Lovelace, your Cole McKinnons, and Robbie Fraser's all kind of making that step up as part of the first team squad. Do you think Archie's got the same kind of mentality or attitude to kind of make that breakthrough before the contract runs out if he doesn't extend it?
Look, I think, yeah, again, as we said in the last podcast, it's always down to the opinion of the manager and his coaching staff. Archie's probably been one of the best players this season at the academy in terms of his consistency. He's one of those guys that in every game you know that he's going to do something. He's always very creative. He's always happy to come and take the ball from the full backs or the midfield players. He'll take the full back on. He'll get to the byline. He can check inside. He's got a good eye for being creative as well. And I think, from Archie's point of view, if he's not going to get that opportunity at Rangers, he'll get it somewhere else. It's just that simple. Whether people want to hear that or not, that's just how it is with Archie. Same as Zach Lovelace and several other players who I'm pretty sure are out of contract at the end of this season. And if Rangers are not prepared to give these guys a chance to play, then they will go elsewhere. In that summer of 2022, we signed Bailey Rice, obviously for Motherwell. We signed Zach Lovelace for Millwall, and we brought in Archie Stevens for AFC Wimbledon. Now, that was an unbelievable summer for the academy in terms of the quality of player, because one of the big things at that point was always adding better players to each group.
Sure.
And I think we did that summer. I don't think we've always did that every summer since then, if I'm totally honest. I think at times maybe we haven't added better than what we had. But that summer, to add those three players in particular was exciting at the academy. And I think all three of those players have gone on to do really well at academy level. But I think you could argue that all three of them should have probably done more in terms of being in and around the first team. Injuries have obviously held Archie and Zach back in particular, but I think all three of those players would probably feel like maybe they could and should be closer to playing first team football. But so without repeating myself, it's always going to be down to the first team manager. We can have an opinion on what we see at the academy games, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be down to sort of Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, or it's going to be Michael Beale, or it's obviously Philip Clement, because they're the most important people in the building when it comes to opinions on players.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with what you were saying, Willie, that for me, obviously, just looking at the first team squad at the moment, we don't have a lot of attacking options up in that kind of front four position.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Czerny at the moment, who is playing that kind of right winger role. Obviously likes to cut in on his left foot, predominantly left footed. Is Archie a kind of similar player to Czerny in that sense? Is he predominantly left footed? Is he 2-footed, or is he a kind of what you would term a classic winger where he's right footed? He just drives to the byline and tries to get crosses in the box.
Yeah, look, he's very strong on his right side, Archie. But, I think he's that sort of player that he's got confidence in his ability. So it wouldn't matter if he was playing on the right side or the left side, if he's asked to cut inside to go to the byline. We've even seen Archie play as a main striker in some occasions where he's done really well. So it's just one of those things with young players. Like, to me, Archie, from the minute he walked in the door in that first season at the under-18s, I think within the first 6 or 7 games, Archie had scored about 12 or 13 goals. He was very dominant at that level. He was very strong at that level. He was scoring goals. He was creating goals. He was one of the best players, if not the best player in the pitch. And I think very early on, there was a degree of excitement around Archie because you could see the technical qualities. He had the pace. He could score goals. He could create goals. He was dragging away runners. He was doing everything you were looking for a really good wide player to do.
Sure.
And then he unfortunately picked up an injury, which I think kept him out for several months. And that was a big turning point for the 18s that season in the league, because I think if he'd stayed fit, there was no doubt in my mind they'd have probably won a lot more games and been a lot more successful. And then he comes back for obviously the second season. It took him a bit of time to get back to where he was. Whereas I think this season he's really hit the ground running. He's been very consistent. He's been very strong in every game. He's probably been one of the best players on the pitch. And I don't know what else he can really do to impress the manager, because he's basically doing everything you would expect of him. And obviously, with his contract running out at the end of the season, I would imagine a bit like one or two others that if he's not going to get that opportunity, Rangers might decide to cash in on him in January, because I would imagine you would get a reasonably decent six-figure fee for Archie, and then I would imagine there would be add-ons in there, a potential sell-on fee, etc. So
Sure.
I think there's some big decisions to get made over the next few months with quite a few of these players, because if Rangers aren't going to move them up to the first team, then I think it's been shown before that there is interest, and especially somebody like Archie, who's played for England at a couple of different age groups. And also, you've obviously touched on Brighton. I'm pretty sure West Ham were another team that had shown quite a bit of interest in Archie, and I'm sure there's been other people up watching him as well. Nottingham Forest, I'm sure, would like him, given that Craig Mulholland was the guy that brought him into the club at the time. So,
Sure.
yeah, I don't think Archie will be short of offers if Rangers, aren't going to push him any further than where he currently is.
Sure. And again, maybe just coming back to, obviously, even the probably one of the other youth players that we may look at. So again, if you're watching this back, if you want us to cover Zach Lovelace, then please let us know. We'll definitely get something set up and recorded for that. But Willie, do you think, obviously Zach is, and maybe just touching on him for a minute. Obviously Zach is in and around the first team. He's been getting some form of appearance. Over the last few games, obviously featured in Europe, and he's maybe featured in the cup games.
Yep.
Do you think do you think Zach is potentially going to block Archie's pathway to the first team, being that kind of attacking right-sided player, or do you think they could both, be brought into the first team squad and maybe as a rotation? I'm just thinking along the lines of, if obviously with Czerny being a straight loan, I don't believe there's an option or an obligation to buy with Czerny. If he leaves in the summer, we're then back to square one with looking for a right winger or an attacking right-sided player. Do you think, again, fitness provided, and maybe suspension, do you think both Lovelace and obviously more importantly Archie Stevens, if he does get a contract extension, if they both get a contract extension, because I think they're both due to, as you said, both due to have their contracts finish in the summer, if they were to be extended, do you think they could both come into the first team squad and challenge for that kind of right-sided berth?
Look, it's all going to be down to the opinion of the manager yet again, but I would like to think that the fact that Zach's in around the first team squad, he's probably going to get a chance first. But I think the one thing that we've seen with Philip Clement is he can sometimes do things totally out of the blue. So you wouldn't be surprised that that Archie maybe particularly got a chance to play. We've obviously got the early rounds of the Scottish Cup coming up as well. So maybe if we were to get a nice draw without. No, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the teams we could play, but maybe if we played a League One or League Two team, there might be that opportunity for Archie to get some minutes in the Scottish Cup in the early rounds in January. But I guess only time will tell on that, to be honest.
Sure. No, I mean, I know it's obviously difficult to speculate in a way, Willie, that at this moment in time he's not really had or seen much opportunity to get into the first team squad. I do think that the likes of Zach is probably ahead of him because he is in that squad, both for Europe and domestically. He's definitely pushing far closer than Archie is at the moment. Do you think, and again, probably just kind of circling back to what we were discussing, if he were to potentially go, I know you've mentioned a number of teams. Do you think do you think he would walk into like a championship side down south, or do you think he would, obviously maybe go to a youth team in the Premier League if he were to leave in the summer?
I think he would probably join like an under-21 group with a view to going out on loan. It's hard because we've only really seen him at academy level. It's hard to really know what level he would go to in England. But if you look at the players that Rangers have had before and the players that have come through, you would think he would probably join an under-21 group. And then if at that point, as part of the discussions in the transfer, you might then look to go out on loan to maybe a League One or League Two team. But he would have to be playing regularly, because there's no point in sending him out on loan and not playing, because at the end of the day, you want to see a player develop. You want to see a player improve. You want to see how he's going to make that step up to the first team.
Sure.
But it's so different because the levels in Scotland are so different from the levels in England. What level is the Scottish Premier League compared to what they would view in England? I'm sure there would be a lot of arguments out there that there's a lot of Scottish Premier League clubs that would really struggle in the English Championship, if not maybe League One. So it's extremely difficult to know. But I think from Archie's point of view, the fact he's not been out on loan at Rangers, the fact that he's now 18, I would think if he does move in the January or next summer, that it would be with a view to going out on loan when he does move to the other club, because I think that's what he would want as the next stage of his development. But I'm only speaking, obviously, from my point of view. I mean, I don't know Archie that well, but just looking at the kid and how he's developed over the 2 years he's been here, the fact that he's basically been part of the England under 17 and 18 squads for most of that period as well. I would imagine in his mind he probably feels like he should maybe be a little bit closer to playing men's first team football than what he currently is right now.
Sure. And again, that's obviously the difficulty, Willie, is that we can only speculate that, being with the fact that his contract's due to run out at the end of the season, it's probably as crucial a time in his career as it is with the club, that if he were to extend it, the likelihood is that he'd probably ask to go out on loan in January, if that's when they are due to extend the contract. If they leave it till the summer, then obviously there's a far higher chance that he'll depart the club. Because I suspect, as you said, he'll not be short of options to go down south, and then that may then take him out on loan to another team, either down south or even back up here to another team in the SPFL. So, I mean, I guess the difficulty is in trying to say, will he make the breakthrough? It's very hard to tell at the moment. He's got all the attributes there to make the breakthrough. As you said, he seems to be a very, very talented boy. He's definitely shown that, as you said, when he first came in, he was, probably one of the best, if not the best player in the under 18s. Again, probably just one of the other points I hadn't mentioned was he helped the under 18s win the Youth Cup in that first year, or last year, sorry, before he made the step up to the B team in this last summer, or the summer of 24. So it'll be interesting to see how if the manager has him or sees him in the plans moving forward, and hopefully with that he'll get a contract extension. And then maybe he will hopefully go out on loan if he does choose to stay with us and get that contract extension. So,
look, the big thing for me is that the player has to want to stay, and he's got to see a pathway.
Sure.
You see, at the end of the day, people will say, well, he should stay because he's at Rangers, but that's not a good enough reason now for players to stay at Rangers. And I think people maybe have to see the bigger picture. When you're see when you're recruiting somebody, there's got to be a vision as to where they're going to be in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. There's got to be like the bigger picture. For somebody like Archie, when Rangers signed him for AFC Wimbledon, like there's got to be a scope where they're like, all right, within the first year, if he's exceptional under 18s level, we'll move him into the B team. And then from then on, there should be a thought process that, okay, he then joins the first team training. and he's then part of the first team squad where he's on the bench a little bit. Maybe he gets 5 or 10 appearances over that season at 17, maybe turning 18. By the time he's 18, the decision is made. Is Archie going to be good enough to play for Rangers? Right, there's a contract extension. So before he gets to the last year of his contract, maybe there should already be a contract extension on the table to make sure that you keep him. Now, the fact that Archie's basically into the last kind of 7 months of his contract, to me, is a concern because all the controls with the player. Now, like Rangers don't really have any control over the situation. If Archie has, look, I mean, let's not be stupid here. Agents talk to clubs, regularly. So I'm pretty sure that behind closed doors, there's been discussions with his agent, with other clubs who have shown interest, and the decision might have already been made behind closed doors that Archie will leave, and Rangers have got absolutely nothing they can do about it. But the one thing Rangers could have done within the first 2 years was also show him this progression towards the first team. And within those 2 years, Rangers could have sat down with him and said, look, we think you've a great talent. We can see the quality that you have. That's why you're in and around the first team. That's why you've had your 5-10 appearances for the first team, mainly off the bench. What we would like to do is send you out on loan to, say, like a League One club in England, where we're hopefully, going to see you play 30, 40 games. If you do well down there, you come back, you'll be part of the first team squad, and then you'll push on.
Yeah.
But just like Zach, Archie's now nearly 3 years down the line, and neither are probably at the level they would like to think they should be at. I mean, Archie, I say, tested slightly less injury, like sort of time out in terms of Zach. I mean, Zach's basically missed a year because of these hamstring issues, which obviously isn't the fault of anybody. It's just the way that Zach is as a player, because he's so strong, he's so quick, he's so powerful. But I really feel like we need to get that in play now. Like if we sign some of the best 16-year-olds, we need to see where they're going to be at 17, 18. Because see, by the time they get to 19, if they're not in the Rangers first team squad, then they're probably not going to play. And that's like the brutal kind of truth of the matter. So for Archie in particular, my kind of thoughts with Archie at the moment is he's probably going to leave. That's like my gut instinct is that he's going to leave. And it'll be a big loss to the academy. But for Archie's sake, he has to go and play. He has to go and improve and develop. He has to go to that next level where he needs to know in his own mind that he's going to be able to play. Because that's where every young academy player wants to be, is playing first team football somewhere, whether that's at Rangers or elsewhere.
Sure, I mean, I can only agree with you, Willie. I think, he's definitely getting a lot of plaudits from the performances he's had over the last couple of years, since he came in. And again, maybe it's just the timing of things. If we'd kept with Gio or Michael Beale, that he may have had more of an opportunity with the first team. But I think, as you say, he's 3 years down the line, more or less, having been with us, as I said, from 2022, and he's, aside from that one substitute appearance in the League Cup against the Queen of the South, he's not been seen in any of the first team squads that I've seen. And again, I'm sure I'll get comments underneath if anyone else has evidence to support the contrary. But yeah, I think being the age he is, the progression that he's made, or lack of progression into the first team squad that he's made at this moment in time, the chances are increasing that he'll leave in the summer, unless there's something that changes, in that January window. Either we sell him at that point, or he then potentially signs a pre-contract with another team, and then obviously that makes it more difficult for the kind of final 6 months, knowing that he's on his way for a free, other than maybe a developmental fee that we might pick up. Due to
you don't want. I mean, the big thing is you don't want that awkwardness. So if the club are starting to become aware that he's going to leave, the best thing would be to try and sell him in January. Rather than him being up in Scotland for another 6 months where he's not going to have a future anyway. I mean, it was a slightly different scenario with Billy Gilmour, but, at that last year that Billy was at Rangers before he had the opportunity to sign as a professional, I think it was fairly well known that he was going to leave the club. And that, the attitude at the time was quite split amongst the people that went to the games. You know, some people were saying, well, we've still got to play Billy because he's the best player, right? So that's one positive, right?
Yeah.
And like, you couldn't argue that, because every time Billy was on the pitch, he was one of the best players.
Sure.
But the argument on the other side of it was, why should we play Billy Gilmour when he's not going to be at Rangers next year? Why should we not have, you know, the next best young player who's playing under 15s, or the next best under 16 midfielder? Like, so why should we give Billy the opportunity to play when he's not going to be here?
Sure.
And this should be the same kind of thing with Archie. If Archie doesn't want to stay, but he doesn't move in January, what's the best thing to do? Is it to keep Archie in the team because he is one of the best players? Everybody can see that. Or should we give the next person in line the opportunity to play for the B team for the next 4 or 5 months?
Yeah.
And this has always been one of these balancing acts at the academy. For me, it's an extremely difficult decision. That, I mean, like, there's no doubt, just kind of touching on Billy quickly. See, when Billy played, he was easily the best player on the team. He was easily the best player on the team. But on the other side of it, that year that he spent playing stopped somebody else from playing who actually decided to stay at Rangers, whereas Billy decided to go. But there's obviously financial aspects to it as well. But yeah, it's so difficult at the end of the day. But my gut instinct is that Archie will go. I think there's a strong chance that Zach Lovelace will go. And there's obviously several other boys that are out of contract. And I think the problem is the lack of bridge between the under-18s and the first team. Like, the B team, since they've left the Lowland League, there's just not been enough there. These kind of games programmes, you know, they've been okay. I couldn't say they've been dreadful. I couldn't say they've been great. They've been in between. But I don't think the guys like Archie see playing these bounce games is enough to, you know, like, sort of push them on. And that's the difficulty with it, mate. But look, it's all down to opinions. The people that listen to this podcast should put their comments in and tell us what they think. Is it good enough to play in the Rangers B team to make it into the first team? I'm pretty sure most people will say no. Because they've not been out on loan, they've not been pushed. I mean, Zach Lovelace has never been out on loan.
Yeah.
You know, obviously Archie Stevens has never been out on loan. Bailey Rice has never been out on loan. Is that good enough? Have Rangers done enough to help these guys push on? This is always going to be the questions. And this is, you know, if people want to have a podcast where we talk about that, like the bridge between the 18s and the first team, we can do that. And I think it's something that would cause a lot of debate, because I think as an overall structure at Rangers, as soon as the players leave the under-18s, I'm not so sure there's enough there to help these kids push on to the first team. And it's a huge argument throughout the whole of Scottish football, if you're totally honest. But at the moment, you know, this is where we are. This is what Rangers have chosen to do. Whether it was down to finances or whatever, I don't know. But these guys are kind of stuck between, like, black and white. But unfortunately, the bit in the middle isn't really taking you towards the black or the white. It's just in the middle. Do you know what I mean? It's such an endless debate, mate, that could go on for hours and hours and hours. But I wish Archie all the best if he does go, because I think he's a really talented young footballer, and he certainly has a chance to have a good career in the game.
Sure. No, I agree, Willie, and I think that's definitely something that, you know, for the folks that are watching the pod, you know, please leave your comments if you do want to see us have that pod, you know, discussing the opportunities between the 18s and the first team. Is it, you know, are Rangers doing enough with our youth players to help them improve and progress and to challenge for a first team squad place or first team opportunity? Leave your comments below, and we'll definitely take that into consideration and maybe get something out in the next couple of weeks. We'll wrap it up there, Willie. I think, you know, as you said, for specifically for Archie, you know, the likelihood is that he will leave in the summer, but he's obviously been a very talented player for both the under-18s and for the B team over the last couple of years. You know, hopefully the club look at extending his deal and maybe look to put him out on loan, so that we can again, you know, harness the opportunity and the talent that he has, rather than let it slip and go to, you know, let another team benefit from our either mistakes or misgivings, failings, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, any last comments before we close things out?
No, like, just as a general thought, I mean, I wish Sherry play the best when they leave Rangers. I don't have any animosity towards players that leave, because when you've watched academy football, you understand that not every young player is going to make it, especially at a club like Rangers. But you want to see them do well. That's why it's great that, sometimes with the B team in the Challenge Cup, we've got to see guys like Kelsey Ewan that was at Rangers, Matty Yates that was at Rangers. So, it's great to see them playing men's football. And that, at the end of the day, is part of the bigger picture. For those that don't make it at Rangers, there's still a chance to go and have a career, and you can go on to have a bloody good career as well for some of the boys. So, yeah, look, being at Rangers is great, but the bigger picture is that it's important that these young guys go on to play men's football, regardless of the level they play at. But, from my point of view with Archie, I wish him all the best if he does go, because that's my gut instinct. If he was to stay, I hope he gets given an opportunity to play, because if we don't do that, I'm not so sure it helps entice the next group of young players to sign for the club.
Sure. No, I agree. I agree. All right, well, we'll leave it there. Willie, thanks again for your time today, giving it up. I know you're soon to be heading out to watch another game of football, so thank you for taking the time to speak to me today on this particular episode of Youth Prospects. Just before we close out, once again, we are in association with Manon Inverclyde, which is soon to be called the Anchor, and also proudly sponsored by Premier VPN. So yeah, with that being said, this has been the Youth Prospect series, the episode for Archie Stevens. Leave your comments below for any of the other youth players that you want us to take a look at, whether that be Zach Lovelace, Bailey Rice, Clinton Enciala. I know he's been playing in the B team as well. If you want us to look him up and give you our thoughts on him, or anyone else within the B team, or anyone of interest, we'll definitely make an episode or two on them. But with that being said, my name's been Rob. Willie, thanks again for your time. And this has been the Rangers Journal. Every night is a Rangers Journal night.